Have you ever wondered why one day you feel outwardly adventurous, chatting with strangers and soaking in every social moment, and then, without warning, you crave solitude and quiet reflection the very next day? Carl Jung once remarked that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what about the things that confuse us within our own shifting nature? One moment you might see yourself as the life of the party, energized by social engagement. In another season of life, you might turn inward, seeking solace in books or deep introspection. Society often tells us we have a fixed identity, as if we must pick a lane, either always outgoing or always reflective. Yet in reality, many of us experience an ebb and flow, a tension between different ways of being that can feel contradictory. If you've ever felt uncertain about who the real you might be, you're in good company. Jung's perspective challenges the idea that personality traits are rigid and unchangeable, suggesting instead that your psyche can shift across different contexts and life stages. Before we unravel how Jung's psychological types may explain your ever-shifting self, take a moment to subscribe if you're new here. Joining this community supports the ongoing conversation about our deepest drives, our hidden motivations, and the pathways to better self-understanding. So settle in, and let's question the idea that we must remain one way forever. Let's explore how your personality, like a kaleidoscope, can rearrange its colors and patterns depending on the light you shine through it. Despite society's tendency to place us in neat categories, life is complex. Perhaps your friends see you as that introspective thinker who loves to read and ponder life's mysteries, yet your colleagues at work describe you as an energetic leader who can rally a team in a heartbeat. These shifts don't necessarily mean you're not being authentic. They may be a sign that different aspects of your personality are surfacing in response to different situations, a phenomenon that Jung believed was built into the human psyche. Could it be that your various selves are simply facets of one dynamic whole, shaped by both your innate preferences and life's demands? This question takes us right into Jung's foundation of psychological types. The dynamic interplay of introversion and extraversion, along with the cognitive functions of thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuiting. Today, we will analyze how these elements can help us recognize the patterns behind our seemingly fluid identities, bridging your conscious understanding with those elusive unconscious tendencies that shape who you are. Let's dive deeper into Jung's fascinating model and see how it all plays out in real life, from major career decisions to everyday social interactions, and learn how you can make sense of your ever-evolving self. We begin with the primary Jungian concept at play, psychological types. At its core, Jung proposed that our energy flow tends toward either introversion or extraversion. Introversion means psychic energy flows inward, drawn to the internal world of ideas, imagination, and subjective experiences. Extraversion directs that energy outward, toward people, activities, and engagement with the surrounding environment. Jung believed neither is better or worse. Instead, each represents a legitimate perspective on life's experiences. If you think of yourself as mostly extroverted, it's not surprising that you find group gatherings thrilling. You might feel alive during a brainstorming session, fueled by the synergy of people bouncing ideas off each other. Conversely, the introverted side of you might display itself when you need a weekend alone after a series of social events, choosing solitude to reset and dive deeply into your own thoughts. That unexpected shift does not necessarily undermine your usual extroversion. It could simply mean your psyche is seeking balance. The next layer of Jung's model involves the four functions: thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition. Jung viewed these functions as the primary tools the psyche uses to relate to the world. Thinking strives for logical analysis and objective truth. Feeling, on the other hand, navigates life through values, personal connections, and emotional resonance. Sensing focuses on direct, tangible data, what we can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. Meanwhile, intuition looks for possibilities, patterns, and underlying meanings. Although we each have access to all four, Jung believed we typically develop one function as dominant, with a secondary function that supports it. When you experience a sudden shift in perspective, Maybe you find yourself analyzing a situation logically one day, but reacting from the heart the next. It might be that your psyche is pressing you to develop lesser-used functions. The interplay between extraversion, introversion, and the four functions often reveals contradictions in our day-to-day lives. Consider the classic scenario of Sam, a 35-year-old project manager who thrives in her office environment. She's extroverted, generating excitement in team meetings and building relationships easily. Yet Sam also has a quiet side her coworkers rarely see. After a demanding work week, she prefers to spend Saturday evenings reading historical novels or journaling about her day. People in her professional circle might say, "We had no idea Sam is so quiet at home." But her close friends know her reflective nature well. This contradiction can be explained by the fluid dance of Sam's conscious and unconscious preferences. She engages her extroverted thinking in the office and relishes that sense of purpose in leading a team. But her introverted feeling side emerges in private, giving her the emotional refueling she needs. Jung would argue that this is not mere inconsistency, it's actually a healthy balancing act. Another real-world example is Daniel, a 42-year-old educator who always identified as logical and straightforward. He prided himself on making decisions based on data, leaning heavily on thinking and sensing. But after a significant personal crisis, such as losing a close family member, he finds himself searching for deeper meaning, tapping into his more intuitive and feeling sides. Suddenly, he's drawn to spiritual discussions, journaling, and even attending retreats that foster personal growth. Some might say he found religion, but from a Jungian perspective, this could be Daniel's psyche compensating for the overemphasis on logic and detail. His soul might be calling forth an unexplored function to help him navigate this major life event. The result is a shift in how he sees himself. He's no longer the purely rational teacher, but someone open to the mysterious aspects of life. Recognizing these patterns of personality can lead to several aha moments. First, it normalizes the feeling of inconsistency. You're not being fake or losing your identity. You're adapting and evolving. Second, it shows you that psychological growth is about integrating parts of yourself that might have been dormant or suppressed. For example, if you've spent years ignoring your creative intuition because your career demanded a logical, systematic approach, you might feel a surge of restlessness that only quiets when you start experimenting with an artistic hobby. Third, it suggests that relationships can improve drastically once you understand that others have their own dominant and auxiliary functions, which might differ from yours. So the next time your partner or friend does something that feels foreign to you, like making a decision purely from the gut instead of planning every step, try to see it as them expressing a different cognitive function, rather than them simply being irrational. These shifts in personality can be likened to a house with many rooms. You might be used to living primarily in the living room, where you host guests and socialize, but there's also a cozy study down the hall where you keep your personal library and a workshop in the garage where you let your imagination run wild. When you move from one room to another, you're simply exploring another part of the same house. You're not abandoning who you were, you're accessing a different internal space. Jung's Psychology of Types invites us to visit all those rooms over the course of our lives, not to lock ourselves into just one. Yet many people wonder, if I can be both outgoing and introverted, how do I know which is my true type? Jung's answer can be subtle. Often you can identify your core type by looking at where you feel most at ease when there's no pressure to adapt. But life often demands we develop our less comfortable tendencies. So your true type might be introversion with feeling as your dominant function, but your career might require you to be extroverted and rely heavily on thinking. Over time, you become more adept at extraversion, and thinking becomes a skillful tool. This doesn't negate your baseline type. It simply adds more dimensions to your personality. The result is a more rounded, versatile individual who can navigate complex environments without losing a sense of self. On a practical level, one application of understanding psychological types is in career choice and workplace satisfaction. If you're strongly intuitive and feeling, you might find fulfillment in roles that let you explore creative possibilities and engage emotionally, such as counseling, teaching, or artistic pursuits. Conversely, if you're sensing and thinking, You might find yourself thriving in areas like engineering, accounting, or data analysis. But it's crucial to remember that your type isn't meant to pigeonhole you. Instead, it guides you in finding environments where your natural preferences flourish, while still leaving room to develop lesser-used functions. Another everyday application lies in conflict resolution, whether at home or in the workplace. If two colleagues are clashing, one approaches tasks through careful data collection, sensing, thinking, and the other leaps to visionary possibilities, intuition. They might accuse each other of either being stuck in the weeds or living in the clouds. Recognizing that these are complementary perspectives can transform frustration into appreciation. The data collector ensures the project's foundation is sound, while the visionary paves the path for innovation. By acknowledging different cognitive styles, teams can harness the strengths of each style rather than battling each other. One deeply relatable scenario is the tension in romantic relationships. Picture a couple. One partner is extroverted and thrives on social gatherings, while the other is introverted and needs solitude to recharge. Conflicts often arise when the introverted partner pulls back to regroup right after a party, and the extroverted one wants to keep the momentum going by inviting friends over for late-night conversation. Jung's concepts can help them see they're both responding naturally to their respective energy flows. Instead of labeling each other as inconsiderate or needy, they can set agreements that honor both preferences. The extrovert can schedule social time with friends, while the introvert has the freedom to step away when they've reached their limit. This simple awareness that they are wired differently can diffuse resentments that might have otherwise grown. A related scenario involves personal growth over time. Suppose you're in your 20s, quick to embrace extraversion, partying every weekend, networking aggressively, traveling to new places. Then your 30s arrive, and you gradually feel the urge to slow down, reflect on your experiences, maybe keep a journal, pursue meaningful one-on-one connections. Friends might say, "You've changed," but maybe you're simply moving closer to a more balanced approach as your psyche seeks a broader integration of your introverted and reflective side. Jung would call this a natural progression toward individuation, the process of becoming more whole by bringing unconscious aspects of yourself into conscious awareness. One powerful metaphor for this shift is to imagine your personality as a kaleidoscope. When you turn a kaleidoscope, the colored pieces inside rearrange, creating a brand new pattern while still using the same elements. If you turn it again, yet another pattern emerges. Your personality may similarly rearrange itself based on the situation or phase of life, but the core materials, your innate preferences, are all still there, merely reconfigured. This helps explain why you might feel like a slightly different person in your work environment, with your family, or when you're relaxing on your own. All these patterns belong to you, and each arrangement can be beautiful in its own right. Now let's address a couple of reflection points that might spark an aha moment in your own life. First, think of a time you surprised yourself. Perhaps you stepped up to give a speech at a wedding or led a challenging project at work, even though you've always labeled yourself shy. How did that feel? Was there a sense of empowerment, or did it create confusion about who you really are? This moment may be a clue that you're more than a single label. Second, consider whether there's a part of you that you've suppressed or neglected because you didn't see it as you. Maybe your childhood dream was to be an artist, yet you pursued a career in finance. That original spark might still exist somewhere in your psyche, and integrating it through hobbies, side projects, or new forms of expression could bring you a sense of renewed vitality. It's also useful to note that Jung's idea of type development is dynamic. Early in life, we often crystallize around our dominant orientation, introversion or extraversion, and our most developed function, thinking, feeling, sensing, or intuition. But as we face new challenges and roles, becoming parents, shifting careers, dealing with loss, or experiencing major triumphs, our psyche encourages us to bring forth other functions. For instance, if you've relied heavily on intuition and feeling for most of your life, you might find yourself thrust into a leadership role that demands more systematic thinking and detail-oriented planning. Initially, this can feel awkward or draining, but over time, you might discover a newfound competence and perspective that complements your original strengths. Let's bring in another supporting psychological idea, the concept of the conscious and unconscious mind. Jung emphasized that aspects of our personality that remain undeveloped or unnoticed often dwell in the unconscious. When we make the effort to explore these hidden parts through self-reflection, therapy, or even life's curveballs, those qualities can emerge into consciousness. This process can be jarring, as it can overturn how we see ourselves, but it also offers a gateway to deeper self-understanding. A real-world example is a 50-year-old attorney who spent decades perfecting her logical approach to problem-solving, thinking. After retiring, she's drawn to volunteer at an animal shelter, connecting deeply with her empathy and care for living creatures, feeling. Her friends might say, "We never saw this side of you." In truth, it was there all along, waiting to be acknowledged. A second supporting idea is individuation, which is not just personal growth, but a realization of the full potential of the individual, encompassing conscious and unconscious elements. The more you embrace different parts of your psyche, the closer you move toward wholeness. You might ask yourself, which side of myself have I tried to hide because it didn't fit my self-image or the expectations others placed on me? That question alone can trigger a deeply transformative journey as you begin to reclaim disowned aspects of your personality. Many people find that once they become aware of these dynamics, a sort of liberation takes place. You can stop judging yourself for being inconsistent or insecure if you suddenly change your style of interacting. Instead, you can see it as a normal fluctuation in your energy flow, a pivot in your cognitive functions, or even a natural step in your individuation process. Imagine you're a well-balanced scale. When the weights shift around, perhaps a new job, a new relationship, or an unexpected stressor, your psyche tilts in the direction needed for equilibrium. That tilt can manifest as a change in how you communicate, how you process information, or the kind of activities you're drawn to. If you find yourself yearning for a more deliberate understanding of your psychological makeup, here are some practical applications to consider. First, explore a reputable personality assessment based on Jung's types, but treat the results not as an absolute label, but as a mirror reflecting some of your tendencies. Look for patterns rather than rigid conclusions. Second, pay attention to your energy levels in different settings. Do you notice a clear shift when you've been around large groups for too long? Or perhaps you feel drained when you've spent too much time alone? This awareness can help you plan restorative breaks or engagements that keep you in balance. Third, practice journaling around major decisions. Try to identify which cognitive function you're using to make a choice. Are you relying on logic, or are you listening to your gut? Over time, you'll see which functions you habitually lean on and which ones might need more attention. Throughout this exploration, remain open to the idea that who you are is not a static entity. Instead, you might think of yourself as an evolving story, a narrative that unfolds in chapters. Each chapter highlights different character traits and arcs, but the hero remains you at the core. When you hit a new chapter, maybe a parenting phase, a spiritual quest, or a career pivot, new traits come to the forefront, possibly surprising you and those around you. Jung would say this is evidence of life's natural progression, prompting you to adapt, discover, and integrate. As you reflect on this, consider a final scenario. You're facing a tough choice, maybe leaving a long-time job to start your own business. Your extroverted thinking side might outline a comprehensive plan, analyzing finances and potential clients. Simultaneously, your introverted, intuitive side might whisper about deeper creative possibilities and personal fulfillment. Which voice do you listen to? Jung's answer: maybe both. The key to harnessing your full psychological type spectrum is acknowledging each perspective. In doing so, you avoid falling into the trap of a one-sided life where only one function or orientation dominates. By integrating multiple layers, you arrive at a decision that feels both rationally sound and soulfully authentic. If you found this exploration helpful, consider supporting the channel by liking and sharing. Your engagement helps more people discover Jung's insights and apply them in modern life. Now let's bring everything together as we move toward our closing reflections. In summary, Jung's concept of psychological types provides a framework for understanding why you may shift from one personality mode to another. It normalizes these transitions as part of an evolving self, rather than viewing them as inconsistencies. By grasping the interplay of introversion and extraversion, along with the four functions of thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuiting, you can see your various expressions of self as facets of a more complex identity. If you want to apply these ideas in a practical way, start by observing your own natural preferences in different contexts. Ask yourself which orientation feels most energizing. Then invite your less dominant functions to have a voice when making decisions or interacting with others. Consider small experiments like spending more time in a solitary reflective mode if you're usually outgoing, or collaborating with others on a creative project if you're more introspective. Another option is to keep a daily log of how often you rely on logic versus how often you rely on intuition, just to see how flexible you really are. Over time, you'll notice patterns, opening the door to strategic personal development. I invite you to join our community of individuals who are curious about the deeper layers of personality and personal growth. Share your experiences in the comments, especially any revelations you've had about your own shifting types. Have you discovered an unexpected side of yourself in a new job, a new relationship, or a personal crisis? How did that realization change your perspective on who you are? Your stories can inspire and encourage others who might be on the brink of their own aha moments. Ultimately, the possibility of transformation lies in recognizing that your personality is not a single snapshot, but a living, breathing process. By embracing all your facets, both the comfortable and the unfamiliar, you honor the full complexity of what it means to be human. That is the core of Jung's invitation, to become more whole, more aware, and more capable of consciously engaging with the myriad aspects of yourself. May this insight guide you in navigating life's changes with courage and curiosity. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing about your unfolding journey as you continue to explore the depths of your psychological type.